in 2020, you're making about 1,500 a month. And then within a year and a half, 10K plus a month. What happened in that 2020 to 2022 range? I'm curious, like what went from 1,500 to 10,000 a month? What did you do?
Sure. I mean, I implemented.
So today we are talking with Holger Sindbæk, who is designer, developer of online-solitaire.com and worldofcardgames.com. And Holger came on. We had a great chat. What did you take away from that, Aaron?
I think his whole story was inspiring. Started out as a designer, learned to be a developer along the way. But I think the thing that really stood out to me is a lot of developers can get kind of focused on like just the tech around it or just the gameplay or what have you. Like Holger strikes me as like a true entrepreneur at heart, and just some of the techniques that he used to both figure out what game to pursue and just some of those different things along the way, I think were very inspiring and great story to hear.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the idea that he did not take it serious for a long time. And he built this game out of just kind of a passion to learn development. And at some point, for him, at some point, it just something changed and he just started focusing on it a little bit more. And that's what really helped it take off. And I think that's such a great lesson for entrepreneurs, people, even for myself who are doing a lot of things, like take things serious and put some intention behind it, because that can actually pay off. So we hope you enjoy this interview with Holger. We'll get right to it. We're here today with Holger Sindbæk, and Holger is a developer you're living in Denmark, right? Copenhagen.
Yeah, in Copenhagen, Denmark. And that's where I'm from as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. We love it there. He is the developer designer of online-solitaire.com. And, it's a
I couldn't
website
get that other domain name there.
Exactly. And he also recently started running World of Card Games.
That's correct.
Thanks for being here, Holger.
Well, thanks for having me.
So to kick things off, Holger, what's your favorite game that you want to play? Or favorite game to play?
At the moment, it's probably Diablo 4, right? So it's a far cry from Solitaire. So, I mean, I would be lying if I told you that I was like a Solitaire enthusiast or something like that. Even though I did play it a lot when I was a kid. But I mean, I haven't really, done so that much in my adult years. So it wasn't from a great passion of Solitaire that I created the game. It was more of a I mean, I wanted to find something like an interesting programming task that I could do that might also earn me some money, right? So that was kind of the reason that I programmed the game at the initially.
Would love to hear more about that. I think as a fellow entrepreneur, I'm always intrigued by like how do people search for their idea and really decide which one to pursue. Was there a particular path that led you to, like, you've been in the solitaire space for a while, but was there something initially that led you down that path?
Yeah, so I usually tell people that I'm a designer turned developer. I was a designer, and I've always had my own projects, right? And then nobody wanted to program my designs, right? So I had to learn programming as well. And then when I was younger, I made a lot of different projects. I've always, learned by doing. And most of those projects, I mean, I always wanted to try to earn some money on the projects, right? But it was, I didn't have any really, big success stories. And then I became kind of tired of that at some point. And then I took a bit more of an analytical approach to things. So I actually scraped like App Annie. I don't know if that still exists. It's like a website with a lot of analytics for the iOS store and the Mac App Store. Then I scraped the Mac App Store for all the games and kind of for amount of reviews and estimated downloads and all that sort of stuff. And then I could make this table of okay, these apps, they have kind of this many downloads, but they have bad reviews, and so I kind of found out that I think it was Free Cell Solitaire actually, which is like a variant of Solitaire. That was the first game that I programmed for the Mac, because it had a lot of downloads, but the reviews weren't that great. And when I looked at the app, then I felt that I could definitely do it better. And then on top of that, then it got me going in this new programming language that I wanted to try out. Right, so that's the first version of the game that I made. That was actually for the Mac App Store. And I mean, it wasn't a huge success, but it was a bigger success than any of the other projects that I've done, at least financially, right? So I think I earned like $20 or something like that on the first day, and then I don't know if it settled at $10 a day, right? Which is not a lot of money, but if you're a student still, I mean, that's great. That's just money coming in without you doing that kind of money. Kind of got me hooked, right? Because that's really the best kind of money. That's the money that you earn while you're sleeping. The reason that I actually did Solitaire was kind of was a fun project, right? It's a fun game, but I had this analytical approach where I wanted to see if I could make an app where I actually earn some money on it.
I think that there's something kind of back in there that a lot of people might skip over, which is interesting. So you had the idea to scrape App Annie, and what were you trying? You're trying to validate an idea, I'm guessing, in that moment.
Basically, I mean, the other ideas or the other projects that I've done, I can't remember exactly what the projects were, but they were kind of a bit more innovative, or whatever you want to call it, right? And I really didn't want to what do you call, reinvent the wheel. I just wanted to now I just want to try to make something that people were already using, just better, right? And then the question is, okay, what are people already using, and what can you do better? So that's when I scraped App Annie, because that could kind of give me an estimate of okay, these apps have this and this many downloads, right? So you kind of sorted by how many downloads they have, and then you just kind of go down the list and see, okay, are they getting good or bad reviews? And if they're getting bad reviews, then have a look at the app and see if you can make something better. And there, I think there were a few games that kind of stood out, but Solitaire was one of them.
I absolutely love that approach. I think that's so smart. It's honestly not an approach I hear a lot of from others, starting out or figuring out what path they want to pursue. So kudos to you.
I think it might also have been a bit easier at that time. I think that was 10 plus years ago. I did that, and it was the Mac App Store, which is, it's still kind of limited how many apps are on there. I mean, I've also tried to create apps for the iOS, for the iPhone App Store, right? And it just kind of disappears in the sea of apps. It might lead me to where do you get your customers, your users, right? Because when you rely on small in-app purchases, or when you rely on ads, then you can't really afford to buy them, with ads or anything like that. So you're kind of down to people having to search for you, right? I don't think I thought of it at the time, but one of the great things about Solitaire is that it's one of those things that people search for. And in the Mac App Store, there were so few Solitaire apps on there that people actually, they had a chance to find the app that I created. Sorry if I'm just kind of going off a bit on a tangent, and
No, I think you're telling this story, and there's a lot of interesting like milestones along the way.
Yeah.
Like for instance, one is you chose to develop for the Mac App Store at the time, which probably was the store was likely pretty new at the time, and you were trying to take advantage of a trend.
It was relatively new, yeah.
Yeah. And now, I guess just to show the transformation, like now it's a website, and it's basically a web game. Do you even have a Mac app anymore?
I think they're still up there. but I mean, I haven't touched them in ages, and I might also still earn a bit of money on it, but it's so little that it's just. I mean, I also have actually the first app that I coded for the Mac App Store was a calculator, and that became quite popular. Actually, it was at times it was the most popular calculator, for the Mac, from the Mac App Store at least. But I mean, people don't want to. I couldn't earn any money from it. Right? So even though I had like thousands and thousands of downloads, right, I couldn't earn any money from that app. But Solitaire, for some reason, people were a bit more willing to pay for it, and I still have them up there like a pro version that people have to pay for before they download. But yeah, I mean, I don't really earn any money from it anymore.
So you've hinted at a little bit business models, and your first solitaire game, at least in the Mac App Store, sounds like maybe that was a paid app or paid purchase. But your website is primarily ad supported. Is that correct?
I mean, it's almost 100% ad supported. I mean, you can upgrade to premium or whatever you want to call it, right? Like a subscription, and then you have, then you get rid of the ads. But I mean, there are so few people. You wouldn't believe how few people actually want to pay for it. So I mean, it's almost 100% ad supported.
But on the Mac app, which it sounds like you still have you gone back to put ads in that, or is that still primarily a paid option?
The ones that are on there now, you have to pay for them before you can. I mean, that's like a paid app, right? So you have to pay and then you can download it. I think I had a free. That was the first one. It was a free one, and then there was like a. I think the way it worked, I can't really remember, to be honest. But I think the way it worked was that you had like 30 free games, and then you had to pay for it. And I think you could do that at that time. I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore by Apple. I'm not sure, to be honest. But I think there was at one point, then I couldn't do that anymore. People, you know they only pay for it if they're really forced to pay for it. Solitaire is one of those games that people just expect to be free. And I mean, in a sense, rightly so, right? Because there are so many options, and you can still download on Windows. I don't think it comes on default with Windows anymore, but you can still download it. And I mean, so yeah, it is one of those games that are usually kind of free, right? And people, the way the internet works is either you pay for it, otherwise you see ads, right?
I think you honed in on a key business insight. It's really hard to stand out in the iOS App Store in a field of like literally millions of apps.
Yeah.
I guess both from a business perspective, but also a developer perspective. What are some of the other just differences you've noticed on native apps versus web games?
I know they're kind of similar in the sense that, I mean, whether people are searching on the App Store or on Google, then you kind of want to pop up, right? So you kind of have to either get good at search engine optimization, otherwise you have to get good at App Store optimization, or good at it, or be able to run campaigns and stuff like that. But I think it's a lot harder and a lot more expensive on the App Store than it is on Google. I think that if you kind of find your right niche, or if you kind of get in at the right moment in time, or whatever, you still have a chance in Google. Where, I mean, I've had on the Mac App Store, I did have some success, but on the iOS store, I've tried several times and I've had so little success. It's been, super, super hard, I find, to kind of pop up when people search for you. And then you're kind of left with paid advertisement, right? Where people kind of have to know your brand or whatever, right? And then they search your brand. But I mean, if you're making games, at least these classic games where people kind of know them already and are searching for them already, then you're just competing with so many apps, which is really, really difficult. So yeah, I mean that's a very big difference between those two avenues or whatever you want to call them. I mean, then there's the whole coding aspect as well. At least if you want to go completely in native and program it in Objective C. I mean, you can probably also do it in React. I mean, you can do it in React Native nowadays, or some of these other platforms. Um, but I mean, that's a whole different aspect, right? That's the programming aspect of it. And when it comes to the business part of it, I mean, the programming aspect is kind of the last thing that you want to think about, really, which is, I mean, it's not very satisfying as a programmer, right? To kind of come to that realization, but it is.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Knowing that the bulk of your revenue is really coming from ads, has there been any like major frustrations with that business model along the way, or any hiccups on monetizing through ads?
Hate ads as much as the next guy, right? I don't want to see ads, right? Nobody wants to see ads, but then again, nobody wants to pay for stuff either, right? And I don't want to pay for stuff either. So you're kind of left with ads. And from a business perspective, I can just say that ads are, super nice. Yeah, I'm a one person business, right? So I don't have like a whole financial department or anything like that. Um, so the way it works is that you just kind of hook up to an ad network, and there are a lot of different ad networks. I use Freestar and have been very happy with them. There are a lot of other ones that I mean, find the one that you like. But the way it works is, they show ads on your website. You basically just provide the space for them, and then they send you a check at the end of the month. So I mean, revenue-wise, it's just so simple, right? Compared to a paid for solution, right, where people are subscribing or whatever. I also just implemented a subscription model on World of Card Games, and people are willing to pay more willing to pay for these multiplayer card games on that page. But then I log into Stripe and I've implemented all this stuff. But then I also see, okay, I have to deal with taxes somehow, right? Then you have to deal with taxes and deal with taxes from England and from different states in America, and it's just like, oh Jesus, that's it's a lot of hassle compared to just this amount of money getting into your bank account once a month, right? That's just it's a lot simpler and easier. And people complain about ads, right? But then when they have the option to remove the ads for a small fee, then they don't complain that much anymore.
So, out of curiosity, that's potentially really interesting insight. So, when you give people the option to pay to remove the ads, do you get less complaints about the ads, even if they're not exercising that option?
I mean, I don't really have any measurable insight into that, but I would say, yeah, I do get less complaints. I think people are less likely to write me. I mean, the way that I do it is that I have the ads, and then just above the ads, then I have a little text button that says hide ads, and then when you click that, then you kind of go to like a screen where it says you can hide ads for, I don't know, it's on World of Card Games, I think it's $5 a month or something like that. Which might sound like a lot, but a lot of people, they spend several hours a day on the site, and when they kind of see that, then I think they're less likely to complain, because they know, they know, like everybody else, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So either you pay, otherwise you get ads.
Do you think with web-based games, there's any other way to monetize? No ads is one option, but coming out with a product or coming out with something else that's maybe more in line with your brand. Have you thought about this at all?
I had a period where I thought about it. It's a couple of years ago, was with online Solitaire, and I tried a few things. One thing, for example, was that I was intrigued about was this. I can't remember I think it was called like an offer wall. And there are different services out there that are kind of offering those kind of things, which is, okay, then you go through a survey, for example, right? And then once you've gone through the survey, that's something that somebody else is paying for, right? That they want a survey made, and then they need somebody to do the surveys, and then you can choose to do the survey, and then you give them like, okay, then you don't see ads for a week or something like that. And I think I still have like a pollfish survey kind of thing on online Solitaire still, that people can take, and then they don't get ads for a week or something like that. But I mean, so few people are using it, and I mean, there wasn't anything effective about it. I also tried to kind of hook up with what do you call it, like a card deck website that sold card decks, like
Actual card decks.
actual, yeah, physical card decks. And then they had like a referral fee that, then you could get 10% of the when people bought something. And then I kind of tried to advertise with that, but that was also just a total failure, right? I don't think that I got a single click. And it's also the thing about ads is that it's at least it still is before Chrome kind of Google will take it away at some point, right? That you're tracked all over the web, right? So the advertisers have become really good at targeting specifically what you want, right? And with these other things like a survey, I don't know, it's not really targeted. And the same thing with the card decks. I mean, you might be playing like a online solitaire game, but I mean, the chances that you're in need of like a physical card deck, they might not be that big, right? so ads, they're just magical in the way that they're really targeted towards whatever you're interested in and what you search for or whatever, right? In summary, I found nothing compared to ads when it comes to revenue.
One thing that I'm always intrigued by is, I'm a designer myself, but I'm not really a developer at all. And you made that transition. And I guess maybe for designers who might be listening to this, what would you kind of say to them in terms of like how it's helped you, just I'm curious about your path a little bit from designer to developer, because that is always a dream of mine, to be like, I just want to build all my own stuff that I've designed, but I've backed away from that a little bit. So I'm kind of curious about your story from that change.
Sure. I mean, you really have to want it, right? It's hard to be good at everything. And these days, if I wasn't self-employed and I had to find like a job somewhere, it might sound like, okay, then I can just go out and say I can do everything. I can design and I can develop and I can do backend and I can do front end, right? But the truth is that I wouldn't really fit super well into any of those roles, right? Because I'm not amazing at any of those things. So I mean, for many designers, I don't know. If you want to go into development, I'd probably kind of maybe stick to a front end because it's so closely, at least when you're developing for the web or for and as an iOS app or whatever, it's so closely related to the design that you kind of have to. I think you almost have to know a great deal about front end development to be a really great designer, because now it's also about like the movements of buttons and what happens when you hover over this thing and all that sort of stuff, right? And I think for designers that's a much more natural step to look at this front end stuff, because it that's how you integrate a design, right? And you're moving around colors and making buttons bigger and smaller and all this sort of stuff. Once you get into like the backend stuff and like working with databases and all that sort of stuff, I mean that's just it's so different from what you're doing. So if you really want to do it, I mean you really have to want to do it to do it as a designer. I think I've always been kind of an entrepreneurial type, so I didn't really think I don't think that I felt like I had a choice. I kind of felt like I had to do it to kind of get my own little weird projects off the ground. And then I also found some interest in it. At some point down the road, kind of then becomes interesting that you can do all this sort of stuff. And I mean, at the beginning, you kind of, at least I felt kind of powerful, right? Because all of a sudden you can deploy a website and you can make users log in, and you can do these apps that really big companies do, and it's the same functionality, but you're just you. Um, so so yeah, I mean, if you want to try your hands on it, I definitely do like my own project, right? Designers usually also have their own projects, right? And those are usually the projects they tend to be most enthused about. So that's kind of where you know where you're willing to put most of your energy. Um, so at least that's how I kind of learned programming, right? That's all through my own projects. And then later down the road, then I went to something called Hacker School. That was when I was living in New York. I think it's called a Recourse Center now, and it's like a writers retreat for programmers or people who want to be programmers. At least it was at that point. So there I got like you know a good deal better at programming, I think. So it was kind of a long there was a long period where I didn't really know what I was, and I still don't really know what I am. But there was a long period where I was kind of going from just being a designer to being a developer.
I like to say that startups need generalists, and it strikes me like you've got you started out as a designer, you picked up the development, you've got one of the top ranked search terms on Google for Solitaire, so certainly you figured out some things along the way about SEO optimization and marketing. I'm curious. It seems like you're getting to a scale now that you might begin to entertain starting to hire others, maybe not full time, but bringing in others to help out on certain things. Is that something that you are doing or that you've entertained in any way?
So I rather not have employees, right? Because that's a hassle. And it's so nice just being like a one man shop, because I mean you don't have to be considerate of anybody really. It can also be pressure sometimes, but it gives you a lot of freedom, right? And I think if I were to hire somebody, I think it would be a programmer, specifically because I got this World of Card games. I bought that earlier this year, and there's a lot of stuff that needs doing there programming wise. But I mean, that's just a whole new ball, kind of game, right? So find a good programmer and then hire them and manage them and all this sort of stuff. That's like learning SEO from scratch or something. And it seems like a big task in my mind, at least. So I mean, I get these days I do pay people like freelancers, but that's I think it's mostly entirely for SEO related stuff. So that's for like running campaigns and yeah, different kinds of SEO related stuff. Like a lot of people are doing that are working with the SEO. You can only get so far doing things. You can get far by doing things by yourself, but you can only get so far. And if you also want to spend time, doing other stuff, then you better find somebody good who can help you with it. I mean, I could spend all my time doing SEO, and that, I mean, from a business standpoint, that might actually be the best thing that I could do, but it's also incredibly boring, all this SEO stuff. Uh, so yeah, so that's that's kind of that's where I spent the most of my money on freelancers. Yeah.
Cool. I think a lot of developers, whether they'll be able to verbalize this or not, are kind of averse to the idea of doing acquisitions. I think there's sort of a mentality of, well, I could just build that. So I'm curious, your your thought process on making your first acquisition. I think that's super cool that you explored that and actually saw it through. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about this acquisition and what led you down that path.
Sure. I mean, it wasn't something that I was pursuing myself. It was a kind of a bit coincidental in a way. I wrote an article a couple of years back talking about my story with online solitaire, and then I got an email from the owner of World of Card Games, and we just kind of exchanged ideas, and I gave her some advice, and she gave me some advice, and that sort of stuff, and then we just kind of kept in contact, and I liked the site, and I didn't really know where to go from where I was with online solitaire, right? Kind of how do you scale, if you can say that, right? Do you build iOS apps, or do you go back to Mac apps, or do you build like new games, and which games to build, right? And then at one point, she kind of got thoughts about, selling the site, and that kind of, okay, that then it became interesting for me. And then I had a serious look at it, and we looked at it together, and then she ended up deciding selling it to me, which I mean it's super. I really like the site. It's built a long while back. Yeah, it's built a while ago, so it needs some updating, both design wise and programming wise. But I'm working on that. So I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be put into it. But it's really got a lot of great potential for growth. And I mean, in relation to programmers, yeah, they're notorious for saying that you can just build that yourself, right? And that's true. With all things program, you can just build it yourself, but some things take a long time to build. And a solitaire website, I mean, it might not look that complex, but it is a bit complex, and it will take you some time to build. Multiplayer card games, I mean, that's a whole other ballpark. The code base for World of Card Games is a good deal bigger than for online solitaire, and it's also more complex. So I mean, that would have taken me a long time to build those games, and more important than that, it already had a stable user base, which is something that I mean that's worth a lot of money. Even if I had to like scrap all the games and build everything from the ground up, I mean the active user base and it hasn't got like great rankings in Google, but I mean it's been up there for a while and it has decent rankings, and Google trusts the site, and that's worth a lot as well. So I mean, you're not only buying a code base, you're buying like current users, the current user base, and you're buying like a placement in Google or on the App Store, whatever it is you're buying, right? So you're buying more than just a code base.
There's a lot of interesting tie-ins too. I mean, that feels like it was just a natural fit, in terms of being able to cross promote solitaire with World of Card Games. How do you deal with all of these new users? Like, how do you wrote a blog post recently a little bit about email communication and how you're really trying to adopt email more. Like, how do you build that community, keep it going, not upset people in that transition? How do you think about these things?
I mean, you don't really. I upset people. People are very upset. At least some people are very upset. I mean, I keep the lines of communication open, so people they can write me. It's very easy to find my email, and they do write me, and they complain or they vent. I also have like a canny. Do you know a canny board? It's like a
Yeah.
for then people can come with product ideas and stuff like that. So people also write there, and I mean, it's just, I mean, the angriest people they shout the loudest, also, right? So I can see on the Kenny board, it seems like there's a lot of angry people, but I also do get emails from people who are very happy with some of the recent changes. One of the recent changes that I made, which pissed a lot of people off, was like what do you call it, like an AI checker for the chat, so people, they can chat with each other on the website, right, while they're playing games. And as with all other places where people can communicate, there are some very people who are saying horrendous stuff, right? But just absolute assholes, right? Or just have a tone that it doesn't fit with new users who are coming in.
Oh, so this was like a bot in the bottom corner, kind of like an intercom chat window.
No, it was just like people are able to chat with each other, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Then I integrated like an artificial. I think it was a Google project actually. So I've integrated like an artificial intelligence checker that can kind of take a snippet of text and then see how they call it toxic, right? How toxic it is. And then I can kind of, the thing I'm doing really, I'm not really saying you can't write it, but I'm kind of giving people a pop-up saying, are you sure you want to write this, right? You're an absolute asshole. Are you sure you want to, post this? And then, they can say, yeah, I want to post that, right? And then if they cross like a threshold, or if they write like enough messages, now I've also implemented that they're getting automatically banned, right? And it's like a 3 strikes and out thing, right? First for an hour, then a day, and then forever. I think it is. And that upset a lot of people, but mostly it was. I mean, there are some people who just really don't like that. That people are checking on that, but it's not really like a public square. It's a card game website, right? And you're supposed to not be very. You're supposed to be a little polite, right?
You would hope, yes.
Yeah. So, but I mean, also then there are people who are really happy with that. But I mean, so you make changes, and every time you make changes, you kind of piss some people off. But you have to make changes to move forward. What I do is that I also check. I can kind of see in the back end, how many people visit the site, and approximately in aggregate, how much time do they spend on the site. And then if there are, bigger movements in those, parameters, then, I kind of get worried. But, if I get 3 angry emails a single day, then, I usually take it a bit more cool these days. I don't, yeah. It's just, I mean, changes are also annoying, right? We all know that. We most people don't really like changes.
So you're a one-person business. You just acquired a new website. I'm trying to think about like what are your goals as a entrepreneur, because there's kind of a cap, maybe, like what in terms of like how much work you can actually do in a day, how like the quality of life, in terms of like what are you willing to give up. I'm curious about your goals in terms of whether it's financial or freedom. Like how do you balance this with developing these games?
Yeah. So I used to have a goal, and that was that I could kind of make a living from it. And then I reached that goal. So now I make a very comfortable living of it. And then I kind of have goals revenue wise as well, but it's more like hitting that next little threshold, right? But I mean, it's not like a big goal. It's just like we all like progress, right? That's how humans are, especially when you put a lot of work into it. So you kind of want to see that next little progress being made. But it's not like I have a big overarching goal. I mean, I have goals with what I want to accomplish work-wise with the projects, and I have lists and lists and lists of stuff that I want to do, and I have like also I've started making small like quarterly plans that I kind of try to I use to guide me as to what I kind of want to implement in this quarter, right? Big things, right? Um, but it's not like I have big goals. And I mean, now I also have a kid, so I mean, I definitely feel that that I'm limited with time, right? once you get a kid, you can't just, okay, I'll just work till 9 in the evening today, right? And I'll work, over the weekend or whatever because I feel like it. It just doesn't work like that anymore. So now, I work until 5 or whatever, and then whatever I can do until that time, I do. And if I don't reach my goal, with what I wanted to do that day or that week, that's just how it is. I mean, that's also fine. That's kind of one of the great things of being a one person business is that you don't have anybody on the other end giving you a deadline, and there's no big deadline that you have to reach, right? I also kind of consider myself more of an indie hacker nowadays. I don't know if that's the term is still I think it's still a thing.
Well, it's still a website at least.
Yeah, it's still a website. And it's, I think the thing that differentiates an indie hacker from like an entrepreneur or startup person or whatever, I mean, indie hackers are definitely still entrepreneurial, is that they basically just want to run a small internet business and make a living of that, right? And I think that's a great goal. I really like the freedom of it. That I can just kind of leave the website for a while, for a week or even a month if I wanted to do, and then do something else. Like this spring, then I have a small summer house and it's very run down. Then I spent a couple of weeks building a new shed and painting and that sort of stuff, and I didn't have to worry about I could only do it in the weekends or whatever, right? Because I can just kind of leave it, the work and the website, and then just go do other stuff if the weather is nice.
That sounds like a life, man. I do want to touch on something there. So when you first launched this card game, it was, I think you mentioned it was making about $20 a month or maybe a day. I can't remember. Was it about a month?
I think it was the first day was $20, and then it was like $10 a day, or something like that on average.
Okay, and then in 2020, you're making about 1,500 a month. That's quite a leap. And then within a year and a half, you're making 10K plus a month, and I'm sure much more than that now with the acquisition. But what happened in that 2020 to 2022 range? I'm curious, like what went from 1,500 to 10,000 a month. What did you do?
Sure. I mean, I implemented ads. I mean, that's
Okay,
the
it's
short
just ads.
answer. So, actually, I created the website. I don't know how long it was ago, like 5-6 years ago or something like that. I was living in New York and I had a startup and I was living the startup life, and I had been doing so for 3 years, and then things started to turn tits up, right? And I was kind of depressed, and I was tired of programming, and I was tired of I was just run down, right? And then I kind of came back to this old Solitaire app that I had, and then I thought, okay, what if I made it into a website? Then I kind of did that in my spare time, right? Just because I didn't know what else to do really, and that could be a fun little project. And then it got up there on the internet, and then I worked a bit on it the next couple of years, but I didn't really do much. It was just kind of there, right? And I did see, there were people starting to come in, and it started to rank a bit better and that sort of stuff. Um, but honestly, at that time, I thought that nobody earned money on ads anymore. I don't know why. I just had that perception that you couldn't earn money on ads. Because I never clicked an ad, right? Why should anybody else click it, right? So I didn't think you could earn money on ads. And then it was under the first Corona lockdown here in Denmark. I got some more time on my hands. At that time, I was actually studying to be a mechanical engineer. I had kind of come home to Denmark, and I became tired of programming, and I couldn't see myself doing it for the next 40 years or whatever. So then I started studying again at the university. But then, the lockdown, then I kind of went to my summer house with my girlfriend, and I had some more time on my hands, and then I decided, okay, why not try to implement some ads? And then I reached out to an ad network, and I implemented their ads. and I can't remember how much it earned me. It wasn't a lot. As you say, it might have been those $1,500 a month or something like that. I mean, which is not a lot in terms of what I'm making now, but I mean, it's definitely great when you're studying again, right? But that's also when I, started taking it more serious, because I had never really taken the project that serious, even though it earned me money, because it was more like pocket money that it earned me, right? And it's a solitaire game, right? How could you take a solitaire game seriously? And then I had the startup in New York. I mean, that was very serious, and you had investors' money, right? That was very serious as well, right? But a solitaire game. But then I, said, okay, let's kind of give it a go, right? And I was still studying, right? So it was basically just money on the side. So um, which, I mean, I think that's a great way of doing a side project, is doing it while you're doing other stuff, because then there's not that big amount of pressure, right? Then it doesn't matter if it doesn't really take off, or if it doesn't meet your expectations or whatever, because you're doing other stuff, right? So this was like my side thing. But then, I started to fix all these bugs that the website had, and I started to, learn more about SEO, right? Which I hadn't really known much about, right? It had always been like a black box to me, something that I'd been scared about, and then I implemented all these SEO improvements. And I just got more serious with the whole thing, right? And then I found a new ad network, and then gradually, month after month, things just started taking off in some sense. And I think the first month that I hit, it must have been almost $10,000, right? Then I was like, okay, maybe I should really take this thing seriously, right? Maybe it's not just a silly little side project. Maybe it's something that I can actually make a living from. Um, yeah, and then I kind of took a half year off, and I did I just started to take the whole thing a lot more seriously, right? And then at some point, I went full time on it. It's actually not that long time ago I went full time on it, because I didn't finish my studies that long time ago. But I did finish them, even though I'm not doing mechanical engineering right now, right? So I don't know how useful it was, but at least it kept me occupied until I found this.
Did you start out with the online-solitaire.com domain name, or?
No, actually, I think it was called. I can't remember. I can't even remember what the domain name was called. I think it was like solitairecardgame.com or something like that. And actually, I did a big screw up at one point, because I got the domain name online-solitaire.com at some point, and it actually was somebody like a domain broker who reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to buy this?" And it's like I think it was $1,000 or something like that, and I was almost like, "Nah." I mean, because I wasn't taking the game seriously at that point, right? But then I decided, okay, yeah, it's definitely a better name. Let's just do it, right? Which thank God for that. But then the way that you do switch a domain, right, is that you basically just do a redirect. You might redirect the sub pages as well, but you just do a redirect of the old domain to the new domain. But then and then you have a lot of other pages, linking to the old domain, probably, right? And then you get all that SEO juice, you call it, right, to the new domain. So Google kind of concatenates the two domains, and then rank you with all the SEO juice from the old domain. But at one point, I forgot to pay the bill for the old domain, because I wasn't using it anymore, right? And I didn't know much about SEO, and then I could just see my rankings in Google just absolutely tanked at one point. And I think it was actually just after I implemented ads or something like that, and started to take the whole thing a bit more serious. So it was kind of a bad start to that whole thing. But I mean, since then I've I've come up. I mean, now it's just like a small bleep in a graph, right? But at that time, it was just like wow, it was like a long way down.
Did that last for like a few months, or was it longer than that? Because it dropped like 50%, I believe, from the graph.
Yeah, I mean it's dropped several times. I've also been hit by a Google Core update at one point. But I think I mean the things that you're seeing on what do you call them, Moz, on SEMrush or Ahref or whatever, it's at least for my website is quite different from what they're showing. So the drop, at least the recent drops, haven't been as dramatic as they look on there. But I mean, at that time, it was a big drop. I think it was like 80% or 70% drop, and it lasted for a good long while. So I mean, it was not good. It was not good. I definitely, I mean. But it's good to know a little bit about SEO, right? If you're running a website that really relies on traffic from Google, right? So I can definitely recommend reading a bit up on SEO if that's the case.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah,
For
it was
sure.
a tough lesson.
So Holger, I'm kind of curious what's next for you. So you've got two websites that is taking up most of your time. Do you have any? Do you plan to do more acquisitions? I'm kind of curious, like what's next for you?
I think most of the time I'll be most of my time the next couple of years will actually go to World of Card Games because there's a lot of stuff that can be done there. I've kind of at least I feel like I reached my limit with Solitaire games. That's I mean, a lot of it is just SEO related stuff nowadays. You can still add new features and such things, but it's I mean the return on investment it's limited. How much better you can make them. Um, right now, I'm working on a big redesign of World of Card Games, which will also make it mobile responsive, which it really isn't right now, which is a big no-no in the eyes of Google these days, right? And also a big no-no in the eyes of the users, right? Because a lot of people are playing from mobile devices or from iPads and stuff like that. And once that's in place, then I'll probably also try my luck with iOS apps again, because unlike Solitaire, then some of these games on World of Card Games like Hearts and Spades and Double Deck Pinochle, and I mean all these games. There aren't that many of them on the App Store, at least not in true multiplayer form. So I think they have a bigger chance um, of I mean surfacing to the top when people search for them. And after I've done this redesign, then I think they also then I think they'll also be up to par with and maybe even better than many of the ones that are in the App Store. Um, and I mean, if that becomes a success, and it's really it's always a big if. I mean, I've had big plans before of implementing this or doing this, and then it's just like it doesn't take off, right? So, but I mean, if that becomes a big success, then you kind of have something nice, right? Because then you have something that can both be for the web and for the iPhone. Uh, and that is like a multiplayer card game platform, right? And there's a lot of classic multiplayer card games. So the next step after that would probably be to expand the selection of card games on worldofcardgames.com. Um, so yeah, so I mean, and there's enough work in that to keep me occupied for like at least a year or two, I think, and that's fine with me. That I kind of know what I'm doing. It might not be the
Well, I think that's a really interesting. I think especially since you were scraping App Annie for ideas for things to build, and now you have, you know, however many, I'm guessing millions of users at this point who have or are playing your games, and you get to use them. Like you get to source ideas from your players. And so I think, you know, you have this ability to validate, and I think that's your instinct, and that's what's really interesting to me to see like what's going to come for you. I think there's a wealth of knowledge that you have that you didn't have before. So that's kind of a cool story, and being able to tap that for new ideas.
I think the truth might be a bit simpler and a bit more boring, which is that I stopped reinventing the wheel, right? That I just kind of I took something that was already there, something people already know, and then I just tried to make it nicer. And I mean, that's not that sexy, right? But it's nice, right? And at least I've liked it, right? Because then you can kind of finesse with the design and make it how you really like it, instead of trying. Always when you try to reinvent the wheel, then you kind of have to find the people who would actually want this, and explain to them what it is, and then convince them to try it out, right? I couldn't fathom making a new type of game. I mean, I think that would be so difficult. Then you kind of have to convince people to try a game they don't know nothing about, right? I would have no idea how to do that. Even though I admire people who do it, right? But I would have no idea how. It's such a whole different ball game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being here. I think for people listening, there's so many great things to come out of this talk in terms of like entrepreneurship, indie hacking, building games, even if they seem boring at first, and then there's potential for it to actually pay for your lifestyle, which is quite amazing. So your story is really inspiring and